The Jewish people are currently celebrating the festival of Hanukkah. Usually on this page, Jewish philosophy, I talk to you about the Jewish teachings regarding the festival of Hanukkah and all that. But since I'm now in the army due to the war against Hamas, I thought it would be interesting to talk about Hanukkah, but from a military perspective. Now, during Hanukkah, we Jews celebrate and commemorate. When the Jewish people, who were a very small army, managed to defeat the Greek army, the Greek Empire, and thus the Jews were able to achieve national independence. Again, I want to talk to you a little about the military tactics that the Jews used at that time. But first, and for those who don't know, I'm going to briefly tell you the story of Hanukkah, because that's what we Jews are about to celebrate. And there was a Greek emperor named Alexander the Great from Macedonia, and he conquered a large part of the world, including what was the land of Israel at that time, and that included the area of Judea, etc. When Alexander the Great dies, which is known as the Hellenistic period in Judea, the empire he had built was divided among his successors, and the land of Israel after a while became part of the empire. Seleucus. What happens is that in the year 175 before Christ, an evil man named Antiochus IV Epiphanes came to power, and he ascended the Seleucid throne, and he began to introduce a lot of policies against the Jews, against Judaism, and this caused tensions to grow between the Jews and the Hellenists. At a certain point, King Antiochus plundered Jerusalem. He desecrated the Jerusalem temple, and then Antiochus began to issue laws that prohibited Torah practices, Jewish practices, and he placed idolatry in the temple. In the year 167 before Common Era, a priest named Matityahu arrives, and with his 5 sons, they start a rebellion against the Greeks. This is known as the Maccabean Revolt. Yehuda, one of Matityahu's sons, Yehuda the Maccabee, takes on the leadership of the Jewish army. And they begin to fight against the Greeks, and they start having many victories because of their clever tactics. After about 3 years of battles, Yehuda the Maccabee manages to liberate Jerusalem, which is our eternal capital. And on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, in the year 164 before Common Era, that's when the temple is purified. And this is what we celebrate on Hanukkah. That's the victory that God gave us on Hanukkah to a small Jewish army against the huge Seleucid army. And the righteous who defeated the wicked. And this is what gave us our national freedom for the following generations. Just think that if the Jews hadn't defeated the Greeks, maybe today the Jews would have disappeared, just like other civilizations disappeared throughout history. Today, thanks to God and the efforts of our grandparents, the Jews once again have a country. We have the State of Israel, and that's what marks, the existence of the State of Israel. That's what marks the beginning of our national redemption. And obviously this also comes with a price, as you have seen in these last 2 months. Our national freedom means that we also have to have an army to defend ourselves. Just like the Maccabees had an army, the Jews are not going to bow down. We will never let those who want to destroy us defeat us. Now, I want to discuss the military strategies the Maccabees used against the Greeks during Hanukkah. And you will see that today in the Israeli army, we have some similar tactics or perspectives. Obviously, technology has advanced, and the style of combat today is very different from how wars were fought back then. But at the theoretical level, you can see many common points in the theory of war. Some examples are the Maccabees. They focused a lot on mobility and speed in order to counter the enemy's superiority. The Maccabees carried out quick attacks and withdrew before the enemy could reorganize an effective response. This is how it is written in 1 Maccabees chapter 4 at the beginning, where it describes the battles against the army of Eliseas and so on. We in Israel today also have a similar combat methodology. An example is the way we carry out airstrikes and rapid ground positioning, and that shows that our mobility and combat capability is fast. Another point similar to the Maccabees is that the Maccabees used the terrain to their advantage, and they brought enemy troops into areas where heavy cavalry couldn't fight, where they were less effective in those narrow mountainous terrains, and that's how the Maccabees won. For example, it is written in 1 Maccabees chapter 3 verses 16 and 24, where it tells how Yehuda Maccabee, he lured the enemy into the mountains, which allowed him to defeat them. Today, the Israeli army also faces the challenge of Hamas tunnels. We adapted our tactics to operate in difficult urban areas, in underground zones, in Gaza. And what we do is manage to adapt to Hamas's terrain to defeat them in their own combat arena. And that's how, let's say, the Hamas tunnels end, becoming their own mistake because it plays in our favor in a certain way. Another similarity is that Judah the Maccabee, Yehuda Maccabi, he used to inspire the troops. He gave them moral strength. And that's a sign that this struggle is not just for land, but it's also based on the Torah, on our tradition, on our indigenous place. An example, so you can see the conviction that the Jews had. You can read that in 1 Maccabees chapter 15, verse 33. There, Shimon the Maccabee, he answers Emperor Antiochus and says the following: "We have not occupied foreign territory, nor have we taken things that belong to others. But the inheritance left to us by our ancestors, which at one time had been unjustly taken by our enemies, we took the opportunity to recover the inheritance of our ancestors." This is what Shimon says to the messenger of Antiochus Epiphanes, and there is Shimon telling him that this land is ours, we did not steal it. It is undeniable that this land has always belonged to the Jewish people, always. The fact that the Arabs unjustly colonized it during the 7th century, during the violent expansion of Islam, does not mean that it became theirs now. For those who call us Jews, colonizers, Zionists, imperialists, land thieves, and so on, all of those are just stories, narratives. This land belongs to the Jews. We are the indigenous people of Judea, and that's why we're here. We're defending ourselves from an enemy that doesn't want to see us here. Just like Shimon the Maccabee explained that to the Greeks, we also explain to the world today that this is our land. And, well, another tactic the Maccabees used was that they attacked Greek convoys and, let's say, supplies. Today, in Israel, we also weaken Hamas at the beginning of the fighting, just like that. What was done was to cut off Hamas communications, also attack key infrastructures, and also blockade and lay siege to the tunnels. And all of this hits Hamas's logistical capabilities, and that helps us weaken them so we can have a much more precise attack. And, well, there are many things we can talk about on this topic because tactics, obviously, and technology have advanced considerably compared to the time of the Maccabees. Yes, like all this rapid response, adapting to the terrain. Well, at the end of the day, these are still principles that we in Israel use because in the end, it's the same land that the Maccabees fought for. It's the same land that we are protecting today. And, well, basically, we really have to thank God for allowing the Jewish people to return to their land, just like the Maccabees. God allowed them to win and to have national independence. We too, our generation, must thank God for this. And, well, with the help of Hashem, the God of Israel, may there be peace, may there be joy, may we see a world where there is true coexistence among people. We don't want there to be fighting and war, but you must understand that we cannot allow what Hamas did to us to happen ever again. And, well, I send you my regards. I also want to thank you for being part of our page, for sharing our content, and greetings from Israel.